I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience, how I hope that it may apply in the Maine context, but of course, I'm going to rely on the support of individual members and the Board of Trustees and stakeholders across the state to tell me a little bit more about how this work applies in Maine. But hearing all about the organizational history and the rundown that Greg did of past efforts at Maine preservation, I do feel that there are a lot of familiar themes. So I'm just gonna get started and hope that I don't keep you too long. And it's it's cocktail hour, so feel free to go get a drink. So when I met with the board during my candidacy for this position, I was asked to respond to Goal 1 of the Maine Historic Preservation Commission's statewide historic preservation plan, which you heard earlier has been adopted in April and is now sitting with the National Park Service. And Goal 1 itself is supporting and expanding Maine Preservation's network. In any effort to achieve this goal, it's important to identify the issues that require Maine Preservation's advocacy voice, whether it's a particular site that is endangered or large-scale policy around tax credits, and build up an audience to support that work. So the first objective is to create a stronger and more active statewide preservation constituency. That's you guys, that's the indoctrinated, but we want to build that audience even more. So this goal includes increasing engagement, improving diversity, broadening reach, and advancing education. So when I met with the board, I presented to them about my experience in doing just that. And I have touched on all of these issues in my positions at both Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District and the Municipal Art Society of New York. But what are those places? Do they mean much to you as an audience? So for nearly 6 years, I was executive director of what we call Friends, which is dedicated to the architectural legacy, livability, and sense of place of the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And more recently, and up until this coming Friday, I have been Vice President of Policy and Programs at MAS, which engages New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs in urban planning, historic preservation, and public art through education, dialogue, and advocacy. Today, I'll touch upon a variety of ways that I've participated in and led advocacy initiatives and further engaged the public in New York City. This is not an exhaustive list, but I hope to demonstrate that my work has ranged from site-specific and technical to broad policy and public awareness campaigns. And again, reinforcing that I recognize that there are substantive issues that may be different in Maine, but many of the tactics and strategies that I have learned over the last decade are applicable in expanding preservation advocacy and engagement. So for starters, at Friends, I actively lobbied for new landmark designations that celebrate untold histories, such as the Barbizon Hotel for Women, significant for not only its architectural merit, but its cultural history in providing novel housing opportunities for women throughout the 20th century. The groundswell of support for this designation led to press attention and a recent book. While at Friends, we also successfully pursued an expansion of the Upper East Side Historic District at the local, state, and national levels with the help of hundreds of letters, petitions, and testimony of our members. A critical component of this success was hours of community engagement and education around the meaning of regulation and the potential financial opportunities available to listed properties. We all know that advocacy doesn't stop at designation. And so I've participated in the review of changes to historic buildings that once they've been designated or listed on the National Register, ranging from private brownstones to public institutions. I was part of the redevelopment advisory committee for the TWA Flight Center as a consulting party in the Section 106 process. The new hotel is a beautiful restoration of the long vacant airline terminal at JFK and a poster child for successful adaptive reuse. But my advocacy experience is not just limited to site-specific projects. It's important to provide tools to volunteer and professional preservationists alike. With my oversight, one of our data analysts at MAS mapped decisions made by the Landmarks Preservation Commission to increase transparency and help neighborhood groups understand trends for alterations to historic properties in their communities. We also mapped historic rehabilitation tax credit projects for our partners at the Preservation League of New York State, who I'm excited to continue working with in the Northeast directors, to share with their legislators as they considered renewal of that program. More recently, documents issued for the Soho NoHo neighborhood plan did not properly disclose or visualize the impact of the proposed rezoning on the 4 historic districts that are located within its boundaries. Under my direction, our team of planners at MAS built a model using Google Earth to show the potential and projected development sites for local community organizers to download and explore. We also used Google Street View to visualize the plan from a pedestrian perspective. Here's the intersection of Baxter and Canal Streets today. And here is what the potential and projected development sites would be built out to their allowable densities. Individual stakeholders now and decision makers are also more equipped to discuss the merits and deficits of this proposal, which is currently wending its way through public review. In some cases, both the landmark itself and the landmark's law are under threat. This is the City and Suburban Homes First Avenue estate. Built between 1898 and 1915, the full block of tenement buildings was recognized for its architectural features and cultural significance as the first affordable housing development financed with private funds. While under review, the owner removed architectural ornament, enlarged windows, and covered the facade in a garish pink stucco to avoid designation. After 2 lawsuits initiated by the owner failed at the highest court, the complex has been saved not only to reflect important neighborhood history, but to continue to provide much needed affordable housing. The constituency at Friends, who lent dedicated financial support for an economic feasibility study and 2 amicus briefs, were integral to our ability to uphold the designation as well as the foundation of the landmarks law itself. But all of this advocacy is dependent upon having a constituency to work with and for. So to start, it's important to create an entry point for people who don't care about or don't know anything about preservation. At Friends, I organized professionally led walking tours featuring the architectural and cultural history of the Upper East Side. Maine Preservation, in expanding its reach, could perhaps provide resources to local groups on best practices and step-by-step guides for hosting walking tours. At MAS, I have also overseen the annual Jane's Walk New York City Festival. In contrast to a formal tour, Jane's Walk is a global celebration of free citizen-led walking conversations inspired by the activist Jane Jacobs. Jane's Walk NYC is the largest of more than 200 participating cities in leading more than 300 walks each year. In each walk, attendees are encouraged to share what they know about the topic and enter into conversation with one another. I believe that there are already some Jane's Walks in Maine, but Maine Preservation could help to facilitate more walks across the state by soliciting them and hosting them on our website. I also have experience creating dynamic activities for all ages. While at Friends, we hosted a district-wide scavenger hunt focused on the immigrant history of Yorkville. More than 125 people participated, young and old. Teams set out to accomplish a set of assignments like mimicking the arches of a historic church. This kind of event can be tailored to any community, celebrating both cultural and architectural history. Maine Preservation could offer a scavenger hunt in a different locality each year in partnership with a neighborhood group, setting them on the path to more interactive and family-friendly programming going forward. At Friends, I oversaw a children's education program that partnered with local teachers to deliver a preservation curriculum. Each involved a lesson or activity in the classroom, as well as time on the street. The first, Building Fun, taught first and second graders to identify basic architectural ornament and design a dream house, shown here. The second focused on immigration history at the 5th grade level, and the third involved a mock Landmarks Preservation Commission hearing. The children's education program is not just an opportunity to cultivate mini preservationists, it engages the parents. Maine Preservation could create a curriculum for local organizations to deliver in their schools using a train-the-trainer approach. At MAS, our Livable Neighborhoods program helps local leaders develop the knowledge and tools that they need to participate effectively in public processes and community-based planning. We solicit requests for partners across the city and tailor the program to individual needs, whether it's Main Street revitalization and economic development, protecting community gardens, or advocating for historic preservation. A shout out to Joanna Crisp, who's listening in this evening, who is at the Maine Development Foundation and used to lead the L&P program with me. But Maine Preservation, along with partners, can host capacity building sessions for various audiences, targeting groups of individual activists or preservation of professionals across the state. For 4 years, I directed an annual conference, the MAS Summit for New York City. On the year of MAS's 125th anniversary, we focused on present-day concerns about the issues central to the organization's long history of advocacy, from democratizing planning data to the potential impact of autonomous vehicles on our public realm, to the preservation of neighborhood character, a conversation shown here. Having worked at the intersection of a variety of planning, resilience, and preservation issues, I could bring similar interdisciplinary conversations to Maine. The summit also had an interactive component called the Innovation Exhibition. In 2019, the summit focused on protecting access to light and air, and the exhibition featured artists, designers, and makers who creatively used these materials. This hands-on approach created a new way for participants to engage in more theoretical discussions. Finally, it's important to recognize achievements in preservation. Friends has been holding an annual awards ceremony since its founding. While many honorees have been typical restoration projects, in 2015, we honored a local steakhouse with what we call the Good Neighbor Award for providing a homey atmosphere to residents and visitors for more than 60 years. And for the last 5 years, I've overseen the Masterworks Awards program, which honors projects that make a significant contribution to New York City's built environment. In 2020, we hosted 3 virtual conversations that were between awardees, rather than just accepting awards as a sort of step and repeat. And for example, one of the conversations drew comparisons between park amenities offered by the restoration of the Fire Watch Tower at Marcus Garvey Park, shown on the left, and the newly installed bait station along the East River, shown on the right. These programs are very much akin to Maine Preservation's Honor Awards, which could be expanded to celebrate the less traditional honorees or adjusted as a program offering to have discussion about opportunities and challenges in completing these projects. And note that submissions for this year's awards are open until June 15th. But we can't just recognize outside victories, we have to celebrate ourselves. And while at Friends, we celebrated the organization's 30th anniversary. I created a timeline of significant milestones and hosted a party at Gracie Mansion, the mayor's house. And MAS is a little bit older. And so in 2018, as I mentioned before, we celebrated our 125th anniversary. In addition to the Summit Conference program that was dedicated to the anniversary, I oversaw an exhibit at the Center for Architecture documenting our long history of advocacy. Which brings us to Maine Preservation's 50th anniversary this year, which I look forward to celebrating with all of you. While listening to the interviews earlier, I was struck by how familiar Maine Preservation's origin story sounded to me. Swap out the characters and the place names, and it could have been about any of the New York City advocacy organizations that I've worked so closely with. It's comforting that we share a common history of stubborn and hardy souls who drive this movement forward. And I'm so excited to join your ranks. And again, I have so much to learn from you all and hope that you will continue to help me to promote and preserve the historic places, buildings, downtowns, and neighborhoods that strengthen the cultural and economic vitality of Maine communities. Thank you.